All right, we are live.
What's up?
For another episode. And on today's episode, I interview a former collegiate wrestler from Iowa Central Community College, turned plant medicine worker and founder of Sprit Visions Market, where you can find at spiritvisions.us, where it's his goal to share and spread the beauty and traditions of the Amazon and other indigenous cultures. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Nate Willard.
What's up, Derek? Good to see you, man.
Nice to see you. It's been a long while, and I'm so grateful that we're reconnecting here for this conversation and sharing it with the world. You have such beauty in your heart.
Oh, thank you, bro.
That and your journey on how you found that place, how you stepped back in, how you remembered. So the goal of these conversations is really to uplift, inspire, and empower all tuning in to move forward with greater trust and faith and belief in themselves on the hero's journey ahead, the hero's journey underway now. And the first question sets us up on a good vibe, and that is, what do you love about your world right now? Not what do you love about the external, the outside. What do you love about your personal world?
My personal world, what I love is I feel like I'm really starting to connect with myself on a new level, like with my soul, like really starting to hear myself on a new level and starting to step into that, because it's definitely been a journey, you know, for sure. So that's where I'm at right now.
It has been quite the journey. I'm excited to explore that and to hear what you've been up to in the last 5 years since we last connected. But before we do, another question I ask every guest is their mission. What is your mission in all that you do, whether that be as a friend, as a founder, a Visions Market, as a citizen of this world? What is your mission that guides you in all that you do?
My mission, I really just feel like, is to just be like a good, decent human. I feel like nothing else matters if we don't treat each other with love and with respect. And, you know, there's a lot of people that can talk a big game, and, you know, whether it's in, no matter what thing it is, really, no matter what area of life, there's people that will talk it, but then won't, you know, do it. And it's like, I feel like literally nothing else matters, just to be decent to people.
What is getting in the way of people walking that walk?
That's a good question. I feel like there's so much stuff. But definitely through my healing journey, I have found that it's people's trauma. You know, everything is people's trauma that gets in the way, because like in the end, all the messed up stuff people do is because they have some dysfunctional method that they're trying to use to find what they really need, which is really in the end like love and connection.
So your trauma, when did you bring it to surface, and how have you healed it? How is it healing?
You know, that's quite a question there. It's been a long journey. So when we connected in the Go For You Win course, almost like roundabouts 5 years ago, that was like pretty early in my healing journey. You know, I had just moved to Texas. I had just found plant medicines and started working with these things, these modalities, and they can be super powerful and super strong and can shed a lot of insight onto your being, onto your issues. And so that was like the beginning of the path. But you know, it really took a lot of diving really deep and just being willing to do really hard shit and do, like, you know, it's interesting because it's like for a long time I was willing to do ceremonies. I was willing to sit in the ceremony. I was willing to subject myself to being shown whatever I needed to see. But there was other aspects of like inner work that I maybe had struggles with or resistance towards. So I was willing to do that. And then as I did that more and more, and as I worked more on myself, eventually I got the message, like, this is what you're supposed to do. Like I had a ceremony where I'm a very like naturally skeptical person, you know, I like have a logical mind. And I had a ceremony where the shaman, the person who was one of my mentors, her name was Maria. She just like guided me through a very special prayer. And I said this prayer and I said it with all of my heart. And then over the next few hours, everything that I prayed about started happening in the ceremony. And it was just like one thing after another, like, that's what I asked for. That's what I got. That's what I wanted. That's what I got. And it just blew me away. And at some point in the ceremony, I was actually in the bathroom, which is hilarious. A lot of profound stuff can happen there. But I was in the bathroom and I just had this moment of realization that everything I had prayed about earlier had happened. And then I just got this like rush of energy that went over me. And I was like, holy fucking shit, all of this is real. Because I like had been going through this from a very like, okay, it can help your brain, neuroplasticity, form new connections, you know, maybe shows you what trauma you need to work on. That had been my perspective, but I was really skeptical about the spiritual stuff. And in this moment, I was just like, all of this is real. Like, this is so crazy. And I just had this crazy rush of energy. And I like was shaking my hands like this, holy fucking shit, holy fucking shit. I was like tripping out. And I went back to the circle. I went to Juan and Maria. I was like, guys, holy shit, all of this is real. And they just laughed. And they're like, of course it's real. What do you think we're doing here? And then in that moment, I had like another rush of energy. And it was just a knowing that came over me, like, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. Like, this is what I need to do. I need to work with this and learn how to work with this and learn how to help people with this. And so I went into work the next day. I was working as a gunsmith at the time. And that's what I moved to Texas for, was to have this job as a gunsmith, which I had gone to school for 2 years. So the next day after that ceremony, I went into work and I quit my job on the spot and was like, no 2 weeks, just quitting. Like, I'm over it. It's unhealthy. It doesn't serve me. And at that moment, I started just selling stuff, selling a lot of my belongings and trying to save up as much money as possible to be able to go to the jungle. And I didn't know who I was going to go see or where I was going to go or anything. I just was like, this is what I have to do and I'm going. And so I just like sold a bunch, put what I needed to keep in a storage unit and went to the jungle. So that ceremony was in the beginning of December, and then come the beginning of February, I was in Colombia. And my friend Maria ended up connecting me with one of her teachers, and we went there. And she said, if he won't receive you, then we'll go see someone else. And we spent about a week there, and we had some ceremonies. And at the end of a week, we all talked together. He said, yeah, I think I can help you. You can stay. And so the plan was to stay for 3 months. And living in the jungle, we were working all day, every day, like working 8 and 10-hour days, physical labor, you know, like working with plants, working with our machete, chopping and clearing, collecting certain plants, learning about a lot of different things. And also throughout the process, we were drinking ayahuasca on average 3 to 5 times a week, I would say. Sometimes it was twice a day. You know, sometimes we would drink ayahuasca and then go out and work. Sometimes we would drink ayahuasca in a ceremony while we would cook ayahuasca. And we would cook like hundreds of gallons at a time, because Taita Bernardo is a master, like from a super long lineage of shamans. And one of his main jobs is he prepares the medicine for other Taitas and other shamans who are not able to, because maybe they don't live directly in the jungle. They can't collect the plants themselves, or maybe they're like a traveling shaman in America that's trying to spread healing that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these different ways of working with it and just really drinking a lot of medicine. And the first 3 months was like beautiful. It was so much light and illumination and learning about myself, and felt like a lot of inner growth. And so I was having such a good experience. I was like, man, I feel like I want to stay longer. And so one night in a ceremony, maybe like 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave, I sat and I prayed. And, you know, I'm on ayahuasca and I'm praying with tobacco and I have my eyes closed, and I'm probably just praying for like an hour. And I just kept saying, like, throughout the prayer so many times, like, yes or no, should I stay in Colombia? Yes or no, 2 more months. And I kept saying yes or no, 2 more months. And that was like the specific words that I kept repeating. And then as I finished my tobacco, which is like a tool for prayer and for manifestation, I exhaled the last bit of the smoke, and I kind of like said, all right, thank you. I know that you will give me a sign that I cannot deny, because I know that I like, if it's not super, super clear, I might like think about it and be like, well, maybe logical, maybe not. So I stand up and I stretched and I opened my eyes. Or, well, the first thing was I stood up and I stretched, and right away, a big, colorful yes flashed in my mind's eye, like, yes, stay. And then I was like, again, the logical mind thing, yeah, maybe, we'll see. That could just be because I want to stay. And then the thing that really got me was I opened my eyes, and right in the center of my field of vision where I was looking when I opened my eyes, the entire sky was covered in clouds. There was not a single star visible, except for right in the center of my field of vision, there was a little opening with 2 stars. And it was the only 2 stars that were visible in the entire sky. I turned around, I looked all over, and was like, so yes, 2. And I kept saying yes or no 2 more months. And so I was like, all right, I got my sign. And I didn't have any money, and I didn't know how I was going to make it work, but I just was like, I'll figure out a way to get the money to buy a new plane ticket as soon as I can. And so that's when I stayed. And then like right after that 3-month mark passed, right after that date when I was supposed to leave passed, then things got really hard. And like all the darkness started coming up, and it's like so much confusion and so many challenges, and like, man, like the hardship, like the stuff I really needed to probably be there for started coming up after my plane like had already left.
Oh, wow.
And so yeah, so I stayed for 2 more months and really just continued doing similar regimen of like a lot of medicine, a lot of work. And then I left Colombia in a pretty rough place, you know, after that 5-month period. And, you know, it took a long time, honestly, like obviously ups and downs. Came back to the States and started working with the people who I had worked with previously, Juan and Maria, and helped organize ceremonies for them, and probably organized maybe over 3 years, maybe like 100 ayahuasca ceremonies, and was like helping to facilitate, not leading them, but just helping to hold the space there, as well as organizing and putting these together. And eventually, you know, there was some differences and some disagreements between ourselves, so we had to part ways, and all of that ended up being pretty rough. And that led to the last year, which was like, I would say probably the hardest year of my life. Like just a lot of stuff falling away, a lot of people falling away, a lot of people trying to harm me and like, you know, take what was mine, or ruin my reputation or things. And the reputation thing was a big one, but it took me 8 months to get to the point where I was like, I see how it was all necessary. Like anybody who left me through drama, like, were not my people anyway. And they really needed to be gone anyway. You know, they're just negative attachments, or people who, you know, the snakes in the grass, people who turn and bite as soon as they get a chance. It's like, you don't want those people. So
Mhm.
it was not easy, but in some ways, still getting more clarity on it, how this whole process has been necessary for sure.
Mhm. Wow. So much to talk about from that, but thank you so much for that sharing, Nate. It started really when you talked about how we met at Go For Your Win. That was Aubrey and Marcus's first group.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about why you went, why you registered for that course.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn about going for your win then, and what does going for your win mean to you now?
Yeah. I registered for that course just because I really liked Aubrey Marcus, and I came across it, and it just was one of those things where the timing felt right. It just felt good. Um, you know, I'd been getting into the psychedelics, and Aubrey Marcus is a proponent of that, and really enjoyed his perspectives and stuff. So that was like, okay, it feels in alignment there. And then, yeah, what did I learn about going for your win, man? there was just so many tools that he taught, so many good little things that could help guide you. Like one that comes into my mind right now is the surrogate, like not letting the surrogate mission take you, and the surrogate mission being like the thing that you think you should do, or the thing that maybe kind of like steps in front of your real goal, and like sometimes seems like, yeah, I really should take care of that, or I really should work on that, but maybe it's not actually in alignment with your bigger mission or your bigger goal right now. And sometimes it's just taking energy away from what you're really trying to do or really working towards.
Mhm. And now, what does going for your win mean to you from this last 5 years of applying these tools and
Mhm.
learning and all the growth that you've done? What does going for your win mean to you now, and what does that look like for you in your life today?
I would say by far going for your win to me means being authentic and doing what is right for you. Being authentic can look a lot of different ways, and I think like everything in the spiritual journey has a lot of different levels to it, and it's like an ever unfolding that's never going to stop. So like you're never there, you're never just like, oh, I'm authentic now. Like it's always a process. And so but that to me is just the thing, because a part of my journey has been getting a little bit lost along the way, and like I really got away from a lot of things that I loved and things that I just always used to do. And like in some ways I started judging those things. In some ways it was like the dogma and the group think of community, because these tools are incredibly powerful and they're incredibly real and they're incredibly effective, but also like the power of dogma and the power of groupthink and group mentality and ideology is also incredibly powerful and really toxic. And so all of that stuff definitely like took its toll for a while and played its part on my life. And so like for instance, I was always lifting weights. I was started lifting weights when I was like 12. I was like benched 300 pounds my freshman year or my sophomore year of high school, excuse me. And at some point, like once I started getting into the more spiritual stuff, I really got away from that, like my wrestling as well. I was an all-American wrestler. I was roommates with John Jones and Colby Covington my freshman year of college, and like just wrestling at a pretty high level and competing with a lot of really high level guys. And like I loved that, man. It was always something I did, and it was like it was like the basis of who I was for a long time. And then just getting rid of all that stuff because of there's a lot of ideas in a lot of the spiritual communities that like stuff you may have seen, like if you work out a lot or you focus on your body, like you're self-centered, or like the physical is not as important, what you need to be working on is your spirit, or whatever these ideas are that like you know uh were not true, but that I let them affect me to some degree. And so just getting back to a lot of those things more recently, and it feels really good. Like been hitting the gym for like 2 hours a day, hitting the weights like 6 days a week, 2 hours a day, and just feels so good. And my like muscle memory and my body is just reactivating. And I'm just like, it's the spiritualist shit you can do, is to just do whatever you like and what makes you feel good.
Mhm. Wow. So let's talk about that more, about the physical and the spiritual. Like in my view, as a longtime athlete myself and someone who's been a physically active person since a child, from everything that I've learned, physical activity is the number one thing that we could do for our brain and for our mental health. So I believe like our physical health, what we eat, how we sleep, what we consume, how we move our bodies, this is all foundational to our well-being. And
For sure.
neglecting that, I feel, is, I don't know, not the wisest.
Yeah, it's really not. And although I like never fully neglected it, it's like It's amazing what our bodies and our vehicles are capable of. But like just doing something is one thing, but like really pushing yourself is a whole nother level. And the amount of benefit you get from like really pushing the envelope with your physical being is, it's pretty profound.
Mhm, mhm. So let's get back into the medicines. For those, and maybe we should have talked about this earlier, but for those that are not familiar with ayahuasca, and that was the primary medicine you were taking in Colombia, correct?
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, let's just talk about what how that plant is made. You said you were working things in making this. So how is that plant made? And yeah, just some brief history about ayahuasca for the uninitiated,
For sure.
uninformed.
So ayahuasca is traditionally a combination of two plants. In Colombia, it's actually typically referred to as yahe, which is made with a different leaf. So ayahuasca is the ayahuasca vine, and then in yahe, so in Colombia, it would be chagrapango is the leaf, and the leaf contains a lot of DMT, and the vine is a MAOI, which allows the DMT to be digested without being destroyed. And then the same thing in pretty much all the other countries, except instead of chagrapango, they use a different leaf, which is called chacruna. And it's just another leaf that's really high in DMT content. There is a really big misconception with ayahuasca, which is that people think it is quite simply an orally active DMT, which is actually incorrect. Because although that is a component of it, the main ingredient of ayahuasca is not the DMT, it is the ayahuasca, which is why it's named ayahuasca. And you can actually drink ayahuasca brewed the same way, but brewed without the leaves, so therefore without the DMT content. And you will have the same experience just without the visions. You'll still get all the feelings, the emotional healing, all of the energetic connection, maybe like feeling or encountering spirits and stuff. You just probably won't have like all the strong visuals. Um, as far as how it's made, we would go out and we would do a day where we would collect the vine. So for example, just give you an example of how we would do that. Um, this is the very first time we ever did it, or the very first time I ever did it. We got to Colombia, and probably our second day there, we drink a cup of ayahuasca in the morning. And then as soon as we drink our ayahuasca, we set off on a walk, and we've all got a machete. You've all got your knee-high rubber boots, and you're just trekking through the jungle. And we're following Taita Bernardo, and we're going to go find a vine, which in the jungle, he knows where all of them are in his area. He knows the age of each one. He harvests them when they're 7 years old, and he lets them grow back before he reharvests them again. He cuts the vine above the ground, so therefore the roots are still there and it can regrow. And we find the plant that we're going to take, we find the vine, and we all pray. We all light a cigar, and we use the tobacco to pray and bless the plant and to ask it for permission. And then once we have all completed the prayer, then we selected this guy, Julian, who was with us, who was a smaller guy, 130 pounds. And like, all right, well, you're going to climb the tree and go chop the ayahuasca out of the branches. And so he's down. He wants to do it. He actually volunteered. So he gets up there, and he's standing in a tree, like hanging off of a branch, like swinging a machete with his other hand, trying to chop off the vine to release the upper part so that the whole thing can fall down. And he steps on a branch that was a little bit dead, and the branch collapses, and he falls out of the tree from like 30 feet up. And he fell, like, of course he drops his machete. So I'm like standing there looking up, and there's a machete falling, and then there's him falling, and I'm like trying to almost catch him. And he fell kind of on his feet, and like, of course, just collapsed down to his butt immediately, and kind of messed up his ankle a little bit. Luckily he was okay. But he was hobbling around for the next few weeks. And yeah, so I mean, that's a typical, like, that's one example of like the way we collect the vine, and there's not really a lot of other ways to do it. I mean, I saw different times where one of Titus' sons was collecting the vine, and it was like a really big tree, like a 200-foot tall tree. I don't know, maybe less than that, but it was a giant tree. And so he had a rope tied around his waist, and he would like secure it to a branch and then climb a little higher and then like move the rope. And so like a little safety net, but you know, it's still like pretty dangerous. And in the tradition, you're drinking ayahuasca when you harvest the vine. That's the way it goes because you're
With
connected to it.
with the DMT in there, or this is without the DMT?
No, typically with the DMT, yeah, the normal brew.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so there's day one, you got your vine. Okay. So, you know, once it's down out of the tree, you chop it up into maybe 4 to 6 foot sections and you carry it back, and you maybe use horses to load some of it on horses, and everyone will carry a big bundle. And sometimes you're trekking a couple miles with this on your back. So through like pretty rough jungle, like stepping in mud that goes all the way down to your knee. Sometimes like your foot will sink up to your knee and you're like trying not to fall over, trying to pull your foot out of the mud. And, you know, just journeys like this every day. So super adventures. And then you get it back and you just kind of like, now the vine's there. Now we're going to do the leaves the next day. And we're going to go out and we're going to find some bushes. And there's some that grow naturally, and there's some that he's kind of planted in certain areas so that we can collect those leaves. And you basically have these giant bushes, and they have these long main branches with like smaller branches coming off of them. And you just grab at the base of a branch and pull, and just pull all the leaves off. And you would do this until you have, you know, like equal parts, excuse me, equal parts vine and leaf. So if you've got like 100 kilograms of vine, you're going to collect 100 kilograms of leaves, which I'm sure you can imagine. Like leaves are pretty fluffy and light, so you really stuff these bags and pack them into these bags, and it takes a lot of time, but eventually we get it. And then probably the next day after that, we're going to be preparing the ayahuasca. So the first thing we do is we use usually like a triangle file, and we scrape the ayahuasca to scrape off all of the bark. So all of that ayahuasca, those like, you know, piles and piles of vine pieces that we have, we're going to debark all of those. And then after that, we're going to use machetes and chop the vines into like small, you know, pieces, little chunks. And then that's just so it has more surface area for the water to get in and really extract the medicines out of it. And then after that comes the time where we actually cook the medicine. And this is usually a 3 to 5 day process where we're drinking ayahuasca and cooking medicine every night. And he has these two, like, I want to show you with my arms width, but I can't, but they're probably like 4 to 5 foot diameter giant bowls that I would say hold maybe 50 gallons each. They're probably like 50-gallon bowls or 100-gallon bowls. And he fills these up with the plants, and then he fills them up with water, and you get a giant fire going. There's 2 of them next to each other, and you're just like stoking this fire for 5 days, and every night drinking ayahuasca. And basically when you're drinking the ayahuasca, you're praying, you're singing, you're dancing, and you're just putting energy into the plants while they're cooking. And, you know, we would probably go through at least one good sized tree to fuel the fires for one batch of ayahuasca. But again, it's like he cooks abnormally large brews compared to other shamans, because that's part of his job, is to help supply medicine to people who can't cook it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's quite a process, but when it's all said and done, you know, it's cooked down and condensed, and then the liquid is taken out, and then you put more water and you cook that down. And then you take that water out and you put one more time. So it's like making tea with the same leaves. You pour out the water, you add more water. And then once you do that, then you condense it and condense it and condense it until it goes from this normal, like tea-like substance down to this thick paste that's like, I don't know, way thicker than honey for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then people consume this, and generally it's consumed in ceremony with like someone, like with people singing Icaros to help guide the journey. Am I correct? And maybe you could just go into that, like what does a ceremony look like and what people could expect from a ceremony?
Yeah, definitely. Normally things are done in a ceremonial setting for a variety of reasons. It's a container for the experience. It provides like a safe energetic container as well, because it's done in a prayer. So the idea being that you're inviting in good things and you're asking like darkness or evil to stay away. It's not welcome here. And so, yeah, so usually it would be, maybe there's kind of an opening prayer, and then there's always an activation of the medicine, which is like a moment where the facilitator or the shaman will pray and put energy into the medicine. And it's like saying like, this is what we're here for. It's kind of like putting your intention into, you know, maybe if you put intention into your water before you drink your water or something like that. It's essentially the same thing. And then after that, people would drink their medicine. And typically the beginning is a little bit like, just sit with yourself. And then usually once the medicine starts kicking in, that would be when the songs and stuff were happening. And the way that Taita Bernardo does it is different. Icaros are something that's from Peru in particular. And there's, you know, there's all these different traditions though everywhere. Brazil, I sat with them in Brazil recently for the first time. They have their own set of traditions. But yeah, there's some sort of way to move the energy is the goal of it. So Taita Bernardo does song and dance, and he will just like dance for hours. And he's got these shakers on that are made of tons of seeds, and they shake and they make like a really strong vibration. And he'll just be singing and playing his harmonica and dancing for hours, and he'll just be dripping sweat and just singing and dancing. And it's like, he's a very intense man though. He's like, you know, like when he would work, I was 220 pounds when I got to Colombia. And when he would work by my side, he's 160 pounds, and he would carry the same log as me. And I was like straining to carry that thing, you know? So he's just a very intense guy. And I think that his way of practicing medicine maybe reflects that. But there's other ways where like Icaros from Peru are typically like very soft and very gentle, and usually no instruments. It's usually just a very specific way of singing. And the term that's coming to mind is spiritual technology. It's like, it's something that's been honed over thousands of years, that they understand how to work with these things. And yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to move the energy, but in the end, I think that's all it is.
And then it's, I guess it's like, this is a hard question, but like, how does the medicine work on the individual, and what does it do? And it does it something different for everyone, maybe. But yeah, like what does that, yeah, how would you explain that to someone that is not familiar with this?
It definitely does something different for everyone. I think there's commonalities, but it's like, in the end, it gives you what you need. Like let's say we're going to drink medicine right now. Like, it's going to give you what you need and what you're ready for right here and right now. And that could be something totally different than tomorrow, because, you know, whatever's present in you today in each moment is going to be always changing. And so the medicine is always going to be changing. And it's like, there's definitely a lot of variables. You know, you go into it in a good mood, that's going to stimulate a certain type of experience. If you go into it in a bad mood, you're more likely to have an experience where you're working with some of that heavier energy, which, you know, is probably going to be harder, but sometimes that's necessary too. I'm forgetting where I was going with this.
You're just talking about what people can expect, and like, so what are the
Oh, yeah.
commonalities? What are the commonalities amongst people's experiences?
For sure. So definitely a lot of emotional release. You're gonna most likely experience some of your trauma from childhood in a way where you can see it in a different light, or like maybe process it more. Pretty common to have visions. However, people fixate on that a lot, and it's not the same for everyone. You know, use myself as an example. I didn't have like any visions in any of my ceremonies until probably like my 12th ayahuasca ceremony. And then even then, like, I don't always have a lot of visions, sometimes more, sometimes less, but maybe less than the average person. And I think it's just different for every single person. You don't necessarily need like visions to get the message, I feel, is like part of what it is.
And so, how you describe a vision? Like you'd visually see something in front of you that is like not really there, or you like imagine something vividly. And what does that look like for you? The visions.
Yeah. I feel like it can be both, because there's times where you'll have visions where it's like it's the realest thing you've ever experienced. Like you can feel it, you can taste it, you can smell it. It's like you're there. And and that could be something very abstract. Like it could be an abstract vision, like something that wouldn't make sense, yet you can feel it and understand it as very real, and something that's like, you know, it's just as real as like the sandwich on your plate at lunch. It's just different.
Mhm.
um or there could be stuff where you could have visions that are very like cartoony and like nonsensical or chaotic. um or you could have visions where it's just like geometry and beauty. And sometimes you feel like some kind of energy or an activation from these things, and sometimes you just have visions. And the thing is the visions have a place, but also sometimes the visions are just the projection of your own mind. Like the visions are not
Mhm.
always like a very important sacred message. Sometimes the visions are just like a thought, like it's something to just observe.
Yeah, I think like what is important from what I've learned and from what I've hear from you is like the feelings. Like it's like what is the feel like what is the feeling behind
Mhm.
whatever you're experiencing, and
For sure.
sit with those feelings and see where they from and why they're there.
Yeah. I'm glad you were getting that from that, because I do feel that very strongly. I feel like it's much more about what energy and what feeling and what message are you getting here. And
Mhm.
if you take like visions or a lot of these things too literally, which is a thing that happens, there is plenty of people like the medicine, plant medicine, psychedelics, whatever you want to call it, it can help you and help you to check your ego. Or if you let it, it can be something that can crazy, like really overinflate your ego in a really unhealthy way. And I think in the end, it's like people are going to do what they're going to do. And this is just giving you an experience, and how you want to interpret it is up to you. Do I want to use this experience to like empower myself in a healthy way, or do I want to use this experience to be able to walk around and say like, oh, I'm better than you, or oh, I'm more god than you, or you know what I mean, like as if that's possible.
Yeah,
But I've seen these things.
no, for sure, I'm sure. So what about the element of people like not addicted to the medicine, but are just constantly sitting in ceremony, seeking without embodying all the lessons that they're being shown. I think like that's, and not just with ayahuasca, that's with any
Yeah.
medicine. It's yeah. Let's talk about that.
For sure, man. That's definitely a thing. I know, because I did it for a while. um, I mean, you said the word right there, embodied. Like the whole point of any of this is to be able to become something new, better, improved. And if you like the way I describe it is, in order to be able to do that, you have to let everything settle so that you can really like feel into this new space that you're in. And a lot of people are like walking around with a snow globe, and they're like taking ayahuasca, it's like shaking up the snow globe. And then you're like looking at it and you're like, ooh, I wonder what I'm gonna get. And then before all the little pieces of snow even settle, you're like, I need more. And you're like, I need more healing, or I need more, more revelations or whatever. And you never actually do anything with what you learn. It's like, like what's the point in reading 20 books a day if you just like it's in one ear and out the other? And
Mhm.
definitely I feel like a lot of people do that with the medicines.
Yeah, and the doing I feel is not even a doing, it's like a becoming. It's like an embodiment. It's
Mhm.
yeah, right? That's what I feel. Um there's really nothing to do other than just to be, to embody that which you know. that you've seen, that you've been taught, um, that you've always known, that you've been helped to remember with the plant medicine.
Mhm.
So ayahuasca is not only your is not the end of your journeys. You have a company now, Spirit Visions Market, where rapé is the medicine that you share. So let's talk about how that came into the journey.
Sure, man. Rapé is a really beautiful tool. It's very grounding. It's good for getting into a meditative state. I describe it to a lot of people as like a shortcut to a meditative state, which, like a lot of these tools, is not something to be reliant on, but it can be a good tool to use when it serves you and when you feel like you need a boost, or, you know, like maybe you get a lot of anxiety and your mind is just going. I tell people this a lot and people don't believe it, and then they do it and they're like, wow, like if you have anxiety and your mind is racing and you take rapé, it's like your mind is just like boop, it just shuts off for like 5 minutes, and it's like, oh, I can breathe, okay, like gives you a minute to recalibrate and recenter a little bit. So it's definitely a powerful tool for a lot of different things, and all the different blends that are made with different ashes. So basically the rapé I carry is only 2 ingredients. And I have a bunch of different kinds, but basically it's 2 ingredients, and one of them is a form of fermented rope mopacho tobacco, which is like very strong tobacco. It's different than what we have and what people perceive as tobacco. It's a different like relative of tobacco. And then the ash of a certain plant. So maybe Urema preta, which is Mimosa hostilis, it would be the ash of that plant. It's not the plant itself. And the ash causes like a catalyzing reaction inside with the tobacco, and it like activates it. And the alkaloids from the ash and the alkaloids in the tobacco, they work together, and it gives you this really strong experience that would not happen if you took one or the other. Similar to the ayahuasca, like take one and it might do something, and take the other and it'll do something. But if you take them together, it does something different and something stronger.
So what led you to rapé, and then what led you to, like, in the first place? When did you first get exposed to it, and then what led you to creating this business?
Yeah, so the very first ayahuasca ceremony I ever sat in was in Ecuador, and that was like my graduation gift to myself when I finished gunsmithing school. And they had rapé at one of those ceremonies, and so that was my very first experience with it. And then whenever I first started working with plant medicines in Texas, Maria, the woman who I was learning from and who she was facilitating the ceremonies, I would call her the rapé queen. She loves rapé. She serves a lot of rapé. She's very much all about like pushing people to their limits and getting people to their edge so that they can like see what's there or see what's over the edge. And so she would serve very big doses of rapé, and she would blow it very hard. And she was like a little 5 foot tall woman, but like blew the rapé like a, you know, like the mountain from Game of Thrones or something, like super strong, felt like your brain was getting pushed into the back of your skull. But nonetheless, like the point I'm getting at is that's where I started to encounter some of the benefits of it. That's where I started first realizing this is something you can work with on your own. This is something that has benefits that can be used as an advantage, or even in ceremonies, it can be used as an extra tool. Like, let's say you're having an experience in an ayahuasca ceremony and you're getting too much in your head, or you're feeling ungrounded, or you're just feeling an energy that you like can't deal with in the moment. You can receive rapé, and a lot of the time it will help to shift it to something else.
So at the rapé, it lasts for like 5 minutes. Is that like how, like, that's like the how it works? And you take it in through your nose?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I have a pipe right here, hold on. So this would be like a more intricate curipe, which is a type of a pipe. And normally you would put a little bit of rapé in your hand. you know, you work with it and you get to learn how much like works for you. But normally, like I would recommend to someone starting out just a pea-sized amount, and you're gonna scoop half of that into your pipe,
Okay.
and then you're just gonna put your intention or your energy or your prayer, whatever you're looking for in this moment. If you're looking for an answer to a question, whatever that might be, into the pipe, split it in half, like I said, put it in the pipe, and then you're just gonna blow it in this side, and it's gonna go out the other side into your nose, and then you're gonna do the other side. And it can be pretty intense for people their first times, but that's why I just always encourage people. Like Maria liked to blow people's heads off, and a lot of the time that would scare people away from ever trying it again. So I am a more gentle person, and I'm like, start as small as you want. If you don't feel it, you can always go more, but better to like work your way up and find your sweet spot rather than, put yourself off from something that could be good for you.
And it instantaneously, you feel it instantaneously?
Pretty much, yeah. You know, that first 30 seconds to a minute, maybe you're going to just really be fixated on the sensation in your nose because it kind of stings a little bit and it's just kind of can be intense. But then after that, you start noticing the feelings in the body. Maybe you're feeling a lot of energy. Maybe your body starts vibrating. Maybe you feel like your chakras align or like your crown chakra open. That's one that happens for me a lot is you just feel your crown open and it's like you can just receive clarity.
Mm-hmm. And how often, like, should one use rapé?
Um, Definitely it's something to use with care. I mean, it is tobacco. It does have tobacco in it. So if you're very addictive to tobacco, it could be a problem. But I've also known lots of people that it helped them stop smoking or stop chewing tobacco. So it's all in how you use it, I feel, just having intention. Um, Typically, I would recommend people to not use it more than twice a day. And ideally, if you are using it with a lot of regularity, if you do like, let's say, 10 days on where you're using it every day, then take at least 3 days off. And it's like that 3 days off, it's like a time of fasting. It's a time to like remember it and have reverence and also a way of just showing respect because because we're habit forming creatures. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your relationship with fear through this whole process. And I don't know, like that's like a big question that I could relate to a lot of stoppages on this journey. Um, fear would have been present for you, even like your whole life, but in your wrestling days, going into the top athletes, there must have been a lot of fear there. There must have
Mhm.
been fear in quitting your job as a gunsmith, the thing that you went for school for and dedicated yourself for 2 years and just quitting on the spot. The fear to go to the Amazon, the fear to just keep on
Yeah.
pulling and unraveling that thread, the fear to come back to the United States, the fear to start your own business. How have you used fear?
Fear is a funny thing. Obviously, it's something we all deal with a lot, and it's the number one thing. It's probably the only thing that in the end that is really holding any of us back is fear. But I say it's a funny thing because I'm very aware of a lot of my fears, and I feel like I'm still working through a lot of those. Like I actually just hired a coach that specializes in trauma recovery from a specific set of life experiences that I have uh, encountered in my life. And a lot of it is just coming down to like facing certain fears that I have had resistance towards, or I maybe, along the journey for a time, maybe didn't want to admit to myself were what they were or whatever. But it's like with other things, like with moving to Colombia, there was like very little fear. I got a strong message and I knew it was what I needed to do. And I was just like ready to do it. Or definitely with martial arts and wrestling, that's one for sure. I'll feel fear. And when you're competing, I think that's very, very normal because there's a tangible something that you're risking with every single time you step onto the mat or into the gym to roll or to train. And so that's there. But with other things, I don't find it so much. And I think everyone's the same. I think everyone's fears are different. And that's our journey, is to find how we can face those and deal with those and overcome those so that we aren't held back from living a really awesome life.
Another thing that holds us back is resistance, and that's that negative force in the world that keeps
Yeah.
us from pursuing and fulfilling our dreams. How do you deal with the resistance, and what is your advice for a fellow human listening to this call that is feeling that resistance? They're feeling that call to go to Colombia or to quit their job or to XYZ, but their mind is telling them that, like, no, like this is the path. This is where you should be doing. Kind of like a surrogate. And the true calling is that heart, that feeling in the heart. But they're stuck. They're stuck at that crossroads of should and must, and they're paralyzed. And
Yeah, man, that's
how would you advise?
that's a good question. How to deal with the resistance, it's, I think, again, something all of us have every single day. It's going to show up in some way. I still feel all kinds of resistance all the time. It's always there, whether it's for a bigger thing or sometimes it's just for like smaller things that just need to be done. It shows up. And I really think that one of the best ways for me personally that I could deal with resistance is just to like probably write about it and specifically intentionally look at what it is that is going on. Like, what is it that I'm resisting? To like really look at that. It's like put it under the microscope and see, like, what is this? Why am I resisting it? What needs to be done? What's on the other side of it? And I think by looking at those things, it's like the same idea as with fear. Just by looking at our fears, we can kind of, if not dissolve them, at least loosen their grip a little bit.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that has come up a lot in this conversation is love. What does love mean to you? What have you learned about love these last 5 years?
Love yourself, man. That's a journey for sure. Love is the biggest journey of all, and that's still very present. Like, I feel like I've definitely come a long way. I was going to say I feel like I've got a long way to go, but let me start with that I've come a long way for sure. It's just a journey, man. I feel like all we can do is try to be authentic and be true and try to have love in your heart. But again, I think it all comes back to the self, because I've really experienced a lot of this in the last handful of years, a lot of it in the spiritual communities. It's like there's a lot of people trying to be a Buddha before they even know how to just be decent. You know what I mean? It's like one thing at a time. You don't have to do it all. Just start with taking care of yourself, man. I really feel like if people just focus on doing what's right for them and being authentic and not letting society or people or your family control your choices, I feel like that's really the beginning of it all. Because if you just do what's good for you, then you're going to feel better and you're going to feel love in your heart. And now I feel love in my heart, so now I can actually like share that. And if you don't have some love in your heart, I don't feel like you can really share it, because you can't, as the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. Or a version that I liked that I heard more recently is, you can't jumpstart somebody when your battery is already dead.
True words of wisdom. Another thing that I like to talk about is the concept of abundance. You left your job, you sold all your things, you went to the Amazon. how did you make this work financially? And then how did you were able to start a business? You just bought property in Texas. How did you manifest this purse of inner wealth and also external wealth? Because in the realm we live, we need money.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Manifestation is one of those things that, man, like for the longest time when people would say that word, I was like whatever, man, just like get out of here with that stuff. But the the more I travel my own life, my own journey, it's like it is so real. Manifestation is super real. Um, and I do feel like I've been very blessed and I'm able to manifest a lot of the things that I want to and that I desire. And honestly, like the little bits and pieces of how it all works and how to do it more efficiently, I'm still figuring out. But I do feel like a big aspect of it is just trusting and like understanding that what you need is out there. And if you just like trust for it to come and it will show up, then it will. And that's how I felt when I left Colombia, or when I went to Colombia. It's like I saved up some money. I knew I had some money, but I knew that like I had no clue what the expenses were like in Colombia. Like going there with what, maybe $1,500 to my name and planning to stay for 3 months and end up staying for 5. And you know, what did I do? I put it out there to people where I was at. When I really needed money, I just let people know and ask for a little help. And it seems like, you know, if you're really doing something, if you're really dedicated towards something, then people are going to be there for you because people can feel that. And you know, I need a little help. Can you spare a few bucks? And then yeah, people donated. And then all that money got stolen and then more money showed up. So it's like it just works out, man. I think trust is the biggest thing.
And so
Yeah.
that's like a key ingredient in manifestation is trust. What is also important in the process of manifestation?
Definitely where you're putting your head, where you're putting your mind, like what kind of things are you letting go through your mind a lot. um you know, if you want to manifest a physical object, then it's not like just thinking about it all the time, but like putting it out there too, finding a way to put some intention out there that you are ready for this to come to you, or you're ready to receive this. And I think there's a million different ways you could do that. You could do it with like a little prayer. You could do it with like a little magic ceremony. You could do it with like, you know, using the full moon and that extra energy to give you a little push in the right direction. Um, but I think a lot of it comes down to intentionality and like, what do I want? And I'm just going to ask for that, like specifically, instead of just, I don't know, like wishing you had something and kind of letting it always be in the back of your head.
Mhm. Embodying the feeling that it is already here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, dude, such a good example. Whenever I embody the feeling of gratitude, man, it's like it is there, you know. And that's actually one of the things that I feel is like almost the bigger piece of the puzzle is like, you know, I can manifest physical abundance and wealth, and I always have been able to do that for whatever reason. Like it's just weird how easy that is. But then like for me, more of the work goes into like, what kind of feelings do I want to have? What kind of like reality do I want to experience on the day to day? That's
Mhm.
where I can put in like more of that intentional energy to really manifest that stuff. Yeah.
Amazing.
Hmm.
So so many nuggets shared. So much truths. A lot of this has been inspired. It's been inspired by the plants. It's been inspired by others, various helpers, various mentors on the way. Let's take a moment to acknowledge some of these helpers. Who were some of your primary helpers and mentors on this path? I'm sure there's many, but let's just name a few. And what were the key takeaways you've learned from these individuals or these teachers that you've applied into your being today?
Man, that's something that I could reflect on for a lot of time. But tied to Bernardo, who was my teacher in Colombia. You know, just for how he was willing to welcome someone into his home to live as a part of his family and to take me under his wing and show me so many things. And as challenging as that time was, and as challenging as I'm sure I was, he was very humble and always with a big smile and always laughing and just always loving and just such a good dude. And eternally grateful to him. I'm actually leaving to Colombia on the 13th coming up. I'm going to visit him. I haven't seen him for a couple of years, so I'm excited to see him. Juan and Maria, who were the facilitators that I sat with a lot in Texas. And even though the way that whole scenario turned out, like really rough and like a really sour, bitter ending, you know, they still played a really big part in my path, and I learned a lot from them. Both things that I can aspire towards and also things to move the other direction from because they're not in alignment for me. But in the end, it's like, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, it's easy to focus on the problems, like when a relationship goes south, but no one's all bad, right? Like everyone's got some good traits and everyone's got something you can take that'll help you. And so focusing on that, dude, like, it's funny because I wouldn't think of this way, but at the same time, I mean, my parents, like, I'm just thinking of the people that have had such an impact on me, and as challenging as family dynamics can be, and, you know, like seeing the generational traumas and stuff, seeing all the stuff that like that my dad has because his dad had it, because his dad was left in a home when he was 3 years old for 3 years with no one visiting him because he had tuberculosis, and like to see how that must have fucked him up and how those things just get passed on, and how like the mirror, you know what I mean? Just the mirror that they offer so you can understand yourself better, and getting the chance to work on those things, because it's just going to keep going until someone deals with it. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a final few questions that ask all guests, and it's that time now. And the first one's a big one. They're all pretty meaningful questions. But this one here, through it all, through all the highs and lows that is this life journey, what has been the number one greatest life lesson that you've learned on your path thus far that you feel called in this moment to share?
Man, deal with our shit. Just find a way to deal with it, because it's going to be there if you don't, and it's just going to keep nagging and dragging and hurting. And so, you know, like, don't put it off, deal with it, find a way as best as you can.
And is there ever an end to that?
I don't really feel like there is. I was talking about this yesterday. It's like, it's definitely a journey, and you definitely get better, and you can get closer to completion, but you're never complete. I feel like it's a never-ending path for sure.
That's okay.
Yeah, for sure. It just keeps getting better as you go, so it's all good.
In 3 words, how would you describe the experience you are having on this earth? So it doesn't have to be like a phrase, just 3 words, and you can elaborate on the words if you wish.
3 words.
Describe your experience you're having in this reality.
Yeah. Wild, adventurous, scary.
Wild, adventurous, and scary. Ooh, an interesting one. We played a lot with time. We revisited the past. We delighted in the present, and right now we're gonna take a trip to the future. We're gonna fast forward us into a time far from now, but it always is just now. And we're alongside and we're with an 85-year-old Nate Willard. Who is that 85-year-old man? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What is the predominant feeling in your being? And what is the legacy that you've left here in your time?
85-year-old Nate Willard, man, he is a happy, silly dude. He's always smiling, always making everyone feel lighter and have some extra hope in their day, some positive outlook, surrounded by just family and friends. I'm confident that that will be part of the reality, just family and friends and loved ones, just, you know, all those amazing connections are always all around. And the message the legacy that I leave is just authenticity and just being real and being who you are, and that really is all you need, and that's the most fulfilling thing that any of us could ever have.
And the predominant feeling in your being?
Joy.
So I want you to stay with that joy feeling, and I want you to stay in that embodiment of that 85-year-old Nate Willard for just a moment. I just want you to really feel into his presence as you, in you, with you. And then bring us back to the present moment, this infinite now. And that 85-year-old Nate Willard, he whispers you a message in your ear. What does he say?
It's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay. It is. It is. It is. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Nate. It's been so
Thank
great
you, Derek.
reconnecting and catching up. For people wanting to, for people wanting to connect with you, they can find you on Instagram at nate.184. That's your personal account, or at Sprit Visions Market. And your website, www.spiritvisions.us.
Absolutely. You can message me through any of those if you want to connect. And I love working for myself. I'm pretty available, you know. I love providing the customer service, and that's one of the joys of my daily life, is just being able to be there for people and make people smile and make people feel cared for. So I'm always around.
Beautiful. We close every conversation. We bring our fist in together for a fist bump in solidarity. A yes to the winner's circle.
To the winner's circle, brother.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's
Peace.
Peace. And let's close on today. Oh, peace.